The kingdom of Aramistan had long been known as a land of beauty and abundance. Rivers cut through fertile valleys, orchards bore fruit in every season, and the people lived in peace under the just rule of their king's emir. Yet even in this paradise there was an emptiness within the king's heart. He was admired by his subjects for his fairness, respected by his warriors for his courage, and loved by his servants for his humility. But in his private chambers he often walked restlessly, gazing at the moonlit sky through the palace windows. He longed for a companion who could stand beside him, not only as a queen of his throne, but as a queen of his soul. For years he had waited, receiving proposals from noble families, but none touched his heart. His ministers often said, "Your Majesty, the people want to see their queen. They need the comfort of knowing that the throne will be complete." The king would nod politely. Yet something in his spirit told him that his true queen was not among those who sought him for power or wealth. One night, after a long day of hearing petitions, King Zamir fell into a deep sleep. In his dream he found himself walking through a misty forest. From the fog emerged a tall, luminous figure, an old man with silver hair and eyes that shone like burning coals. The stranger raised his hand and spoke in a voice that echoed like thunder. "O king, your longing is not in vain. The one you seek, the queen destined to stand by your side, exists in this world. But she is hidden, not by walls or chains, but by the trials of destiny. If you desire to find her, you must prove yourself worthy. 3 trials await you, and only by passing them will your path be revealed." The dream ended suddenly, leaving Zamir sitting up in his bed, his heart pounding. Dawn was breaking, the first golden light spilling over the palace walls. He could not dismiss the dream as mere imagination. It was too vivid, too powerful, too real. He summoned his council and told them of his vision. Some dismissed it as a fancy, others as the trick of an overtired mind. But one old minister bowed his head and said, "Majesty, dreams of such clarity are not without meaning. Perhaps it is the will of the Almighty that you embark upon this journey." By noon, King Zamir had made his decision. He would leave the palace and search for his queen. He ordered his most trusted companions to prepare for a journey into the unknown. The people of Aramistan were both anxious and excited. They gathered at the city gates to watch their ruler depart, holding banners and chanting prayers for his safe return. Zamir rode at the front, clad not in golden armor, but in the simple attire of a traveler. "This quest," he told his companions, "is not for glory or conquest. It is a journey of truth." The first trial revealed itself sooner than he expected. After 3 days of travel, the party arrived at a valley shrouded in silence. A sign, carved into a great stone, stood at the entrance. "This is the Valley of Truth. He who speaks falsehood within these grounds shall lose his way forever." Zamir dismounted and gazed into the misty expanse. The valley seemed ordinary, yet there was a heaviness in the air, as though unseen eyes were watching every step. As they entered, the king's men began to feel uneasy. The path twisted and turned, often splitting into 2 or 3 roads. Some of the soldiers whispered to one another, suggesting shortcuts, or guessing which way was correct. But whenever someone spoke without certainty, the ground seemed to shift, and the path they chose vanished, leaving them disoriented. One soldier panicked, crying, "This place is cursed." But Zamir raised his hand calmly and said, "Remember the command, no lie shall guide us. We must speak only what we know." From that moment onward, he insisted that every man speak with honesty, even if it was to admit ignorance. When someone did not know which way to turn, they said so. When another admitted fear, they spoke it aloud. To their amazement, the fog began to thin, and the true road became visible. Zamir himself led with the greatest example. At one point, a minister asked him, "Your Majesty, do you know for certain that the queen truly awaits you at the end of this road?" For a moment the king's heart trembled. He wanted to say yes, to give his men confidence, but he chose truth. "No, I do not know," he said, "but my heart believes, and that belief gives me strength." Instantly, the valley opened, and a beam of sunlight broke through the mist. After hours of walking, they emerged from the Valley of Truth, exhausted but unharmed. Behind them, The fog closed like a curtain, sealing the path forever. Zamir turned to his men and said, "The first trial is passed, not by might, not by cunning, but by truth. Perhaps this is what will guide me to my queen." That night they camped on a hill overlooking a silver river. As his companions slept, King Zamir remained awake, staring at the stars. The words of the old man from his dream returned to him, echoing in his mind. 3 trials await you. He had passed the first, but to still remain. The thought both frightened and exhilarated him. Somewhere in the vastness of the world, the woman who was meant to be his queen was waiting. He whispered to the wind, "Wherever you are, know that I am coming." And with that promise in his heart, he lay down to rest, ready for whatever destiny would bring on the next part of his journey. The second trial awaited King Zamir, as he and his companions continued their journey beyond the Valley of Truth. Days of travel led them to a vast river, wider than any they had ever seen. The water glimmered under the sun like molten silver, but its current was fierce, swirling with a power that could sweep away an entire army. There was no bridge, no boats waiting on the shore, only the roar of the river that seemed endless. On the far side, green hills rose against the horizon, and Zamir felt instinctively that this was the next step of his destiny. Yet how could they cross? While his men debated, arguing whether to build rafts or search upstream for a crossing, Zamir noticed an inscription carved into a large stone near the water's edge. The words were faded yet clear. "This is the river of patience. He who waits with faith shall see the path. He who rushes with haste shall be lost in the waters of time." The king read the words aloud, and silence fell over his companions. Some scoffed, "Majesty, how can waiting bring us across this torrent? The river will not part simply because we sit here." Others argued for action, urging to cut trees and attempt a crossing at once. But Zamir remembered the trial of truth and how only by obedience had they found their way. He raised his hand and declared, "We will wait. No man shall enter the river until the path reveals itself." The order was difficult for many. Soldiers grew restless, pacing along the shore, their eyes fixed on the rushing water. Days passed, and supplies grew short. Some whispered among themselves, doubting their king's wisdom. But Zamir remained steadfast. He sat by the water each evening, gazing at the flow, as if searching for a secret hidden beneath its surface. His faith became a quiet flame that held his men together, even as frustration gnawed at their hearts. On the 7th night, as the moon climbed high, the river shimmered differently. Zamir was the first to notice the change. Where the current had once been chaotic, a line of calm water stretched across like a silver thread. Slowly, as if drawn by unseen hands, the mist above the water cleared, revealing a narrow stone bridge that glowed faintly in the moonlight. The men gasped in awe, their doubts swept away by wonder. Zamir turned to them and said, "Behold, the reward of patience. The river yields not to force, but to those who wait." Together they crossed the bridge, their footsteps echoing softly against the stones. Behind them, the bridge dissolved into mist as soon as the last man stepped off, leaving the river wild and impassable once more. On the far side, the land was quiet and green, filled with tall trees and meadows that stretched toward distant mountains. Yet peace was short-lived, for the final trial awaited them. After a day's journey, they arrived at a wide courtyard, surrounded by marble pillars. At its center stood a throne of stone, and around it gathered many women, each radiant and adorned in fine garments. Jewels glittered on their necks, and golden crowns sparkled on their brows. Each woman looked upon Zamir and cried, "I am the queen you seek. I am destined for your throne." The king's men exchanged confused glances. How could they know which one was truly chosen? Every woman seemed beautiful, every voice convincing. One minister whispered, "Majesty, perhaps you must choose the one who looks most royal." Another suggested, "Select the one whose jewels shine brightest, for surely the heavens have favored her." But Zamir felt unease. He remembered the words of the dream. 3 trials would test him, and the greatest was yet to come. This was not a contest of beauty or wealth, it was a test of the heart. He walked among the women, listening to their words. Some promised him power, saying their families would strengthen his kingdom. Others promised wealth, speaking of treasures they could bring. Yet their eyes did not meet his with sincerity. They sparkled like gems, but cold, lifeless. Zamir's heart remained unmoved. At last, he noticed one figure, standing quietly at the edge of the courtyard. She wore no crown, no jewels, no silken gown. Her dress was simple, her hair unadorned, and she did not push herself forward as the others did. Yet, there was a calmness in her gaze, a quiet strength in the way she carried herself. When Zamir approached, she bowed her head modestly. "I make no claim," she said softly. "If it is written, your heart will know me. If not, I will return to my life as it was." The king felt a stillness within him, a peace unlike any he had known. His doubts vanished like mist at sunrise. He realized then that truth had guided him through the valley. Patience had carried him across the river, and now his heart itself must speak. He placed his hand gently upon his chest and listened inwardly. The voice of his soul whispered with certainty. This was the one. Turning to his companions, Zamir declared, "Here stands the queen whom destiny has chosen. Not the one of jewels or crowns, but the one whose heart shines with sincerity." The women who had boasted and clamored faded away like shadows, vanishing into nothingness, until only the simple woman remained before him. She lifted her eyes, and in them, Zamir saw not only gentleness but courage, the strength to walk beside him through whatever trials awaited in life. In that moment, the throne of stone glowed faintly, and the air seemed filled with unseen music, as though the heavens themselves blessed the union. King Zamir took her hand, and together they left the courtyard. His men followed, their spirits lifted, for they had witnessed the fulfillment of destiny. The trials were ended, the search was complete. The kingdom of Aramistan would now have not just a queen for its throne, but a queen for its people's hearts. And as they journeyed homeward, the king whispered to her, "You are the answer to my search, the light that was hidden until the time was right." And so began a new chapter for the kingdom, where love and destiny met to shape the future of all.